teachers, if it's nurses, if it's doctors, if it's police, all of those. So you still need that core over and above ensuring that you keep up with progress that's happening elsewhere in the world. So that has always been important in addressing the education transformation in our country. The fourth and important pillar of education transformation, I believe, is that it has to advocate for and embrace change. And this is linked, obviously, to the third point I've mentioned. And change being that, technology moves fast. And I'll briefly address some of these earlier as I wrap up and conclude. And that we have to be cognizant of the fact that the rapid change in technological advancement, our education system has to keep up with all of that. What happens in industry, particularly because of their pursuit of profits, adjustment, but also the size of industry, adjustments in terms of change becomes much easier compared to what happens in institutions of learning. If you're running 26 universities, 50 TVET colleges, if you're catering for about a system that ideally should be about 3 million, 3.5 million students, it means that adaptability to change may be a bit of a challenge, which we have seen. But we've also seen how, in most instances, our universities and our TVET colleges have become innovative to introduce programs that shows that they want to be adaptable to change. And then finally, an important principle of transformation is that it has to serve both local and global needs, but also respond to all of those. Yes, South Africa and its sovereignty and its commitment to the developmental agenda within the continent is important. And we've become that platform within which many of the countries in the continent rely on South Africa's education system in order to develop their own cadreship or their own human resource development. We probably have, comparatively speaking, throughout the continent, a bigger presence of students from the continent compared to anybody else. Any other country. Most universities, international students, the number and the quantitative growth of international students has been one of the things that they have embraced. And so when we emphasized the question of education transformation, it was also about opening up that education system to both the continent, but also to the world. We have residents of academics from the continent and from all over the world. And I think most of our science and research institutes, we launched the Biomedical Research Institute in Stellenbosch University earlier this year. And of the researchers who were there, many of those were from Southern Africa and from Sub-Saharan Africa, which emphasizes the collaboration that we have and the impact that it has. But one fundamental thing that, especially recently with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen how our universities and our research institute located themselves not only to serve the needs of South Africans, but also the needs of the continent. We became the hub for gathering data, for monitoring the behavior of the COVID-19 virus, and also to mobilize resources both locally and globally in order to build capacity to manufacture vaccine, but also I mean, our academics here, universities here, were the first in many instances to help discover new COVID-19 strands and help in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And when we speak about foundations of education transformation, we surely should not leave out the fact that our education system has to serve both the local but also the global demands and global needs. And so, based on these five fundamentals in terms of academic transformation, I believe that this should be the basis within which BRICS member countries collaborate. There's a whole range of work that already happens, firstly in South Africa and within the continent, but also amongst BRICS member countries as it relates to education and skills. One of those is obviously student exchange. There are a lot of students' mobility amongst BRICS nation of countries. There are a lot of South African students who are studying in Brazil, in India, in China, in Russia. And similarly, there are other nationalities within the BRICS member countries who are also studying here in South Africa. So I think that's firstly very fundamental. There's a lot of collaboration and cooperation that happens amongst and between BRICS member countries in terms of the TVET sector. We've exchanged experiences. We've also seen students being placed, South African students being placed in different parts of the world as part of skills exchange, as part of workplace experiences, but also as part of strengthening people's exchange amongst BRICS countries. Now, particularly with TVETs, the one point which I hope we can have a discussion, because I think this is probably the one platform where we should, is our collaboration at World Skills, the World Skills competition, which is, in my view, one of the most important platforms where we exchange in terms of skills, as different countries. And so I think part of the discussion here will have to include how we strengthen collaboration amongst BRICS member countries at World Skills. I think when I went to the last World Skills competition at the awards ceremony, we've seen a lot of BRICS member countries going onto the podium, taking different top positions. And so I think an exchange at that level would be helpful, but not only specifically for the competition, but also for what the competition offers as it relates to the transformation of the TVET sector and the role that it plays in making an impact on the skills revolution within the BRICS countries. The third emphasis, or the third form of collaboration, and maybe more further discussion that needs to take place probably here, is how we collaborate in terms of research, knowledge production, but also in terms of the indigenous knowledge system. We, in our own different way, as different BRICS member countries, have got a strong base and foundation in terms of indigenous knowledge systems. A strong base in terms of research. I think we've shown our leadership in terms of research, as I said just recently with COVID-19, but even beyond that, we've seen huge technological advancements that have been coming out of BRICS member countries. And the beauty about this research and knowledge production and innovation that has been coming out has not only been focusing on the military, because for years, global innovation, or the world's innovation, has been led through the military and as a way of positioning certain countries in the world and their strength in terms of the military. But I think that what we've seen with the leadership of many well, not of many, but of the BRICS countries is that research and development, knowledge production, emphasis has been on promoting development, but also on strengthening each other's economies and also fostering world peace. I can go on and mention some of the specific innovations that have come out from BRICS member countries whose intention has been to intervene in health, in education, in transport, in rural development, in issues such as water security, electricity security, and so on and so forth. And I think it is at that level that we need to redefine what the role and purpose of research and development is globally and how it can positively impact on the lives of many communities. And finally, I think we need to look at how through this collaboration, using both education and skills and what comes out of that, that we can lift up the most vulnerable in our communities. And in this case, young people whom you represent. I believe that the agenda of your discussion would not be complete if it does not advocate for every young person all over the world, yes, but more importantly, amongst BRICS member countries, to have a skill. That's important, to have a skill, because that's the only way within which we can help to lift millions of young people out of poverty, out of unemployment, out of destituteness, and place them at the center of development of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. Please do take a seat in the middle so that young people from all BRICS countries can be able to take a good look at the Deputy Minister. Might I add, one of the youngest in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we just want to appreciate the Deputy Minister for reminding us that we need to build a cohort of young people that are conscious about their surroundings and are willing to play a meaningful role and be change makers in their immediate communities through education. We're going to be moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to introduce the different panelists that are going to be having a discussion with us. We want to make the session as interactive as possible. People of South Africa, you will be noted last because you've got home ground advantage. 80% of you here are from South Africa, so we're going to encourage our visitors. Please note your questions, your comments, and your inputs towards this panel that is going to be discussing on the transformation of education, us preparing for the future of work. We're going to welcome Mr. Rodrigo from Brazil. Give them a round of applause. Ms. Tandy from South Africa. Miss Anastasia, all the way from Russia. Mr. Sipho from South Africa. Miss Gugu from South Africa. Mr. Mao from China. And Dr. Innocent from South Africa. If you can just please move to that side so that the beautiful participants, just take a seat to that side as well, so that the beautiful participants can be able to see. I'm just going to request the team just to remove the podium for us so that you can be able to see all of our panels. As you can see, it's the entire room right here in front. It was very deliberate. We want this engagement to be as vast as possible, to touch on many different aspects of education transformation. The unfortunate part is that we will not be able to exhaust the discussions that we want to have today. So in the United Nations, they usually say, if you don't capture us within the next 2 minutes that we give you, it means that you did not prepare. So we're going to request that all of our panelists make sure that you are brief and straight to the point. Should you want to submit a thesis, I can take it for you and I will hand it out to our beautiful participants. But we're definitely going to start with our participants that come from different BRICS nations. Allow me to take a seat. There's a lot of furniture here on my chair. We're going to be starting the conversation with Rodrigo from Brazil. We're going to be starting with Rodrigo from Brazil. And because we're reflecting on education transformation, there are pillars that the Deputy Minister was speaking about, and one of them is access to education, right? And my question to you is, how do we ensure that poverty doesn't become an inhibitor to accessing education, especially for young people who come from previously disadvantaged backgrounds?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me try to kind of weigh in terms of the Brazilian perspective and comment in general, as the subject is very relevant to all BRICS countries and worldwide. I think the democratization of education and access to higher education specifically is something that countries should be working and should be looking at in terms of access and inclusiveness to education. Obviously, I think it goes without saying the importance of education, and an education which is looking outwards in terms of like what is modern, right? We should be talking as well about the future of work, because in my opinion, it's very linked with education, right? The role of the school is not essentially just to educate for the workforce, for labor, right? I don't think that's the only reason. But we have to take into account that, different statistics say that we, in the next 20, 30 years, we won't have professions, we won't have roles as part of society as we have today. Some of the statistics would say that around 50 to 60% of professions won't exist in 2030, right? So that's very close, and that's a very gray area as well. So I think when we talk about education, we should be looking at higher education access. We should be looking at democratization of education. We have to be inclusive, and we have to be looking to the future of work. What are the professions and how people will be part of this future, right? You have AI, you have robotization, you have artificial intelligence, you have so many things which are taking place right now. And we should be looking at that as policymakers, as society, as educators. So I think that's my 2 cents in terms of education.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mao from China, let me bring you in here. He's speaking about us preparing for the future of work. How do we ensure that we leverage on each other's success? I mean, China, in terms of BRICS, is leading in terms of technology, artificial intelligence. How do we leverage as a BRICS cooperation on some of your successes towards preparing young people to be future ready for the future of work?
Well, thank you so much for a question. I think it is a very good one because education and the future development of youth is really concerning us all. I want to go back to the points that Mr. Deputy Minister has just mentioned in your keynote speech, that the TVET education, the skills training cooperation between the BRICS countries has always been playing a very important role. And in this field, I think I just want to mention that there has been some institutions within the BRICS countries to strengthen the TVET cooperation, such as the TVET Cooperation Alliance, the TCA, and also we have the BRICS University League, the BRICS Network University, and such institutions. Within these frameworks, we have the Chinese side has tried to share its vocational skills, to share its best practices with other BRICS countries. One of the most promising example of such cooperation is that the Luban workshop. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this establishment. The Luban workshop is a joint vocational education institutions. One of these Luban workshops, the very first in South Africa, was established right here in Durban in 2019, jointly by the Durban University of Technology and the Tianjin Vocational Institute. And such institutions provide a great platform for young people to communicate each other, to exchange their ideas, to help each other to develop in terms of skill training. And also, it is a very important. It has played a very important role to give back to the society, especially to the local society. One of my favorite example, how important, how successful such cooperation is that in 2021, I guess, I'm pretty sure, 2021, during the pandemics, the students and teachers at the Luban workshop in Durban, they have used the technology and the resources that China has provided, the 3D printing facilities to produce facial masks and personal protection equipments for the medical workers combating the COVID pandemic. And 4,000 facial masks was distributed to the medical workers for free. So this is a very good example of how we leverage our knowledge and how we combine our knowledge and efforts for the joint good, and to make a real contribution to the people that we're working with. So I really wish that we can expand such cooperations in other areas in South Africa and also in other BRICS countries.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister, allow me to bring in here. I know you're doing a lot of work around vocational studies, and he's touching on TVET colleges and in that sector. I just want to find out, how to ensure that we drive vocational studies to become a critical anchor in the economy. I mean, more often than not, when we speak in South Africa about TVET colleges, not a lot of young people have got interest in it because they don't understand what is the fundamental basis of actually having vocational studies. So how do we position TVET institutions to become a driver and a leading force in developing our economy in South Africa?
Look, I mean, that has actually been the case globally. I think Brazil, China, they would both tell you that young people, their aspiration is to go to a university, because globally we have privileged university education. And so what we've been doing over the last few years has been to send out the message that, one, we've invested more resources in changing the face of our TVET colleges, changing the infrastructure, developing capacity of our facilitators or lecturers at TVET colleges, introducing new infrastructure, in our collaboration with the government of India, for instance, and with many other governments, of course. For instance, we've established various centers of specialization. The one particular being at the Tshwane South TVET College. Where in state-of-the-art machinery is being used to train young people there. And I think the one fascinating story that has come out of there is how the electrical section, despite the fact that there is no curriculum requirement for them to be trained on, solar installation and maintenance and all of that, the institution itself took initiative because they have the machinery, and those young people there are already working in the field, before they even graduate, because of the demand thereof. So TVET colleges have become exciting. I think we're gradually changing that perception that that universities are the be-it-all of our post-school education and training sector. And I think I'm hoping that many of you who are here who know someone who's doing their grade 12, before they decide to go and apply at a university, advise them to check their local TVET college because that's where we believe this country needs to be going to. By 2030, we need to be producing about 30,000 artisans per annum. Many of the projects, from the President's Economic Recovery Plan, we did an analysis of that as the department, and many of the skills that will be needed to meet the Economic Recovery Plan can only be produced at TVET colleges. So that's the kind of drive that we've seen. And as I've said, the sector itself has grown. We need to almost triple it, or actually quadruple it by 2030 if we're to meet the 2.6 billion target of the NDP. But that's the kind of drive that we're pushing currently, because we believe that the TVET sector is the future of skilling young people in our country and all over the world, obviously.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Anastasia, let's bring you in here. So Russia ranks quite high in terms of SDG 4 that speaks to quality education. So we just want to have an overview and understanding of what makes your education system work. What anchors it? What are some of those finer details that, as different countries sitting here, we can be able to say, look, this is one of the areas that perhaps we're lacking, and we may want to implement to ensure that we also do quite well in terms of SDG 4.
Education is always about people. So inspired educators and motivated students are the key answer. And also, I would like to introduce one more word, which is, I think, key to lots of questions which we have in education and enlightenment sphere. It's sharing. We live in the world where we can share our knowledge, we can share our expertise. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go to the distant towns and rural areas where there are lots of kids, where there are lots of teenagers who really want to develop themselves? So we as experts can participate in non-profit projects. And I myself is the head of NGO based in Russia in a small city, Ijevsk, and work on that issue. We go to rural areas, different schools. We're trying to present the variety of opportunities that there are at the national level, and we try to embrace those who want to participate in that. So, and I also do believe that we need to go practical, not just talk, but proceed with some small actions which we can do together, and let's share our expertise, let's share our best practices. And in this aspect, I would like to propose one initiative, and maybe my dear colleagues or guests will find the opportunity to support it. So within the framework of the Youth Council, which we're going to develop, to establish the Youth Association of Mentors, and to try to go to our countries with a bunch of experts who are really interested and ready to share their expertise with young people, and try to give, at least let's start with small advice to those who have projects right now. I mean, in Russia, there are lots of young people who have different kind of projects, social, business, technological, scientific, and they simply need good advice, a person who can contribute to the development of them. So let's think of this association as a part of the council, and we can start implementing that with the initiative, which I call the Mobile Project Lab. So I invite fellow colleagues to Russia to come to our events, which we organize regularly, and try to negotiate, to communicate with young people, and contribute with your expertise, and maybe develop even joint projects. So my answer is sharing knowledge, expertise, and your inspiration.
Thank you very much. We're going to be having the next conversation with sector education and training authority representatives. In South Africa, we say to them they're the ones that are supposed to be leading the skills revolution so that we can be able to see, all of these things that we're speaking about materialize, especially when it comes to transformation. Ms. Gugu, I just want to bring you in as the CEO of INSETA. The financial sector holistically, highly untransformed. I mean, even when you look at the upper echelons of financial institutions, whether it is your CEOs, managing directors, it's slanted towards one particular race and gender. What is the role of INSETA in driving transformation in the financial sector holistically in South Africa?
Thank you. Fortunately, Ms. Mohale, within the financial services sector, there are three sectors. So it's the insurance sector, bank sector, and FASET, which is the financial services sector. And our responsibility is to ensure that we provide an adequate pool of skills within the financial services sector. And you're correct when you make reference to the lack of transformation. It is happening, but at a very slow pace. So what we are doing, we have also collaborated because I think as a deputy minister was making reference to access. I think what we need to also think about is the integration and also working together in terms of collaborating. So we are collaborating as the three seaters in terms of pushing the agenda of transformation by ensuring that we collaborate on high impact interventions. One of them critically, which is impacting the sector, is digitization. And without digitization, and you understand the sophistication that comes with the financial services industry. So we run a myriad of programs in collaboration with one another, but also with other key role players like the higher education institutions as well as private training providers on just ensuring that there is enough appetite and interest in pursuing digitization. That's the first part of what I would want to input in terms of your question. One, we identified also that transformation cannot happen outside of the because for formation. So the majority of our programs that we run in collaboration with the industry target specific professional levels within the organizations to ensure that they impact the transformation at a managerial level, at a supervisory level, but also at a technical level. So there are specific programs that we run to support transformation within the financial services sector.
Thank you very much. Let's bring in Agrisita. More often than not, I mean, when we have a conversation, today in particular, Nelson Mandela Day is actually anchored around climate change and food security, right? There is a critical role that young people can be able to play in terms of ensuring that there is a high level of food security in South Africa, but also on the African continent. Young people are lamenting over the lack of support in their specific areas, whether it is accessing land, whether it is accessing financing. What role does AgriSeta play in ensuring that young people can play a catalytical role in the agricultural sector?
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think in the main, the first part is what the Deputy Minister has indicated on the contribution that the country has done on the 5 pillars that he raised. But to go practically on what he has said in trying to answer your question, he spoke of 26 universities, 50 TVET colleges. I'm making extra 11 agricultural colleges in the country. And these, in the main, they are located in the rural areas. So young people have asked us and say, CEO, you are too old and you are not making agriculture fashionable. Can you find ways to attract us more into agriculture? So we came up with ways. Amongst them is the following. One, most of them that we train, they end up not being employed by the private sector or public sector. They go to entrepreneurship, and some they do not end up succeeding. So we called the captains of the industry, or farmers, particularly top 10 levy payers in each province, sit with them. Let me make an example of Limpopo. Called all the universities in Limpopo, the vice chancellors and the head of departments in agricultural science department, and your TVET college principals, including the principals of the agricultural colleges, and the local municipalities, your district local, through the program Deputy Minister of DDM. So we sat there to say, you universities keep on pointing fingers that the students you are producing, they are not employed by these farmers. And the top 50 levy payers are here. They pointed fingers at the universities, but we're not producing the type of skills that we want. And you guys at the municipal level, the mayor, you sponsor bursaries to 50, 100 students to go and study at any university or outside the country. But you don't come and ask us what type of priority skills do we need. So it was our role as Agrisita in that session was just to facilitate. We facilitated, we liked it. Now the mayors at local municipalities, they are trying to fund the bursaries for those students who are going to have employed at various top 10 levy payers. So we have programs to support the students like you have indicated. For the first time as government, we put 50 million, 49.6 million for bursaries of all students in agricultural colleges, so that the missing middle is catered. Any student in the local area has a place to go. We spoke with traditional leadership. We have relationship with them. So they provide land for those students who complete at agricultural colleges or TVET colleges with agriculture as a stream. They provide the land for those students to study. Over and above that, whatever their produce is, we have spoken with one of the company. I had no intention of promoting them in this platform. One of them is Boxer with more than 450 all over the country. So that whatever they produce, it goes straight to Boxer. It will be the quality things and that they check. So our interest now is to get those students in these agricultural colleges and TVET colleges, that they are able to be picked up, go to your BRICS member countries, learn the practicality of where they are situated, particularly those that are located in the rural area. We may have internet, but they don't have gadgets. And where we are seated right now, we have good brains of people that can come up with better plans, that the government can partner them to support all the students that are located in rural areas. So there's quite more that we are doing, but obviously based on the instruction of your time, I have to respect it.
You have raised quite an interesting discussion point that is going to take us to the wholesale and retail sector. So when you speak about young people having access to markets, you then mention your Boxer, of course, your Pick and Pays are there. And when we're speaking about the revitalization of the township economy, you find that young people in those localities cannot be able to have immediate access to the economy because a Boxer comes in from wherever. They are stationed in a community. You know, you've got challenges of spaza shops running out of business, and that is us trying to invest in the local economy. So I just want to bring in the wholesale and retail sector here around the role they play in ensuring that young people can be able to tap in to the market. You know, how do we ensure that when we find funding for young people to enter into the space, how do we protect them from oligopolies and monopolies in the particular sector that they're operating in, especially your boxes, your other retailers? I don't want to give them free advertising. They might just want to go and pass by and see what exactly they sell. I'm only mentioning Boxer because you already mentioned it. What role does the CETA play in terms of transformation in that particular sector?
Yeah, no, thank you, program. I think our role is mainly facilitation, bringing the two parties together. I'm happy my colleague has spoken about a boxer, for an example. Just last month, we just finished a program that we started a year ago with boxer, in which over 300 small-scale emerging farmers were recruited into the program in the Eastern Cape, and 71 of those have already secured offtake agreements with boxer. And one of the ladies there actually has gone even to employ more than 15 permanent people with 2 cars having been bought. I think that is one classical example in which we try to facilitate as a wholesale and retail sector. We currently have a project that we are doing with NYTA, in which we are going to be funding over 300 young people who are aspiring into the wholesale and retail sector as entrepreneurs. So that project is already in the pipeline in terms of implementation. And as a CETA, we are investing almost over 16 million for the next 16 months for that particular program. So now, if you think of all these other programs that we do, generally from our strategic point of view, we're looking beyond supporting these particular emerging entrepreneurs and those that have already established. Hence, part of our strategy is to bring about strategic partnership. As I've indicated with NYTA, we also have another strategic partnership with SIDA, in which we are looking to benefit over 4,000 South African-owned spaza shops across the country. This is the role that we're trying to facilitate as a SITA, and not only our investment is on the training part of it, but we also provide the business support grant so that they can use either to replenish their stock, to can replenish their facilities where they trade from. Those are some of the few programs that we are doing at that particular level.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to jot down your questions and comments. Just after this few last questions, I'm going to allow you to make your inputs. Ms. Thandi, I just want to bring you in here. When we have a conversation around the future of work, more often than not, we always lament that young people are not ready or equipped for the industry, right? So you've got an education system that trains young people or educates them, but when they need to make that jump to the other side, industry then says, you guys are not fit, you do not match what the industry requires. What is the role of industry in this whole entire value chain? So if higher education and the CETAs are there doing their part, where then do you fit in, and how can we be able to ensure that we solidify the role that you play so that we can be able to have young people that are ready for the future of work?
A controversial opinion is that even the people that are currently in their positions are not ready for the future of work. And I say this controversially because we are lifelong learning, every single one of us. We are in a revolution. It's not coming, we are in it. So we are making decisions as we go. We are learning as we go. We're doing data-driven learning. We are using KPIs and even artificial intelligence to tell us the data before us, and we make a decision. So to say that young people are not ready would be a lie. We are all not ready. We are all learning as we go. To afford the young people an opportunity to learn as we do, because I think most of us, and I say we as if I'm much older, I'm not, I'm still a younger person, but having been in the industry for long, I think it's important to take young people with us. And the fear mongering of saying that we are not ready, people are not experienced, neither of us are at this very moment. We are, by 2030, most of the positions we hold won't exist, right? We will have new positions, and some of those positions are not yet defined, right? In the institution of learning in 2020 at the time, that 75% of the positions, future positions to come, have not yet been made up. So the opportunity for us as young people and for industry and government to define what the future means, what the economy means for the future is there. We have that opportunity and we can give it back to the young people because the future is theirs, to give them the opportunity to define what the economy means for them, how they will choose to participate in it outside of traditional norms and not to hang on to it. So that change that needs to happen in our head so that we can lead better is important.
Thank you very much. She reminds us that here is a moment for you to be able to chart your own future and make a determination of what role you'll be playing in the development trajectory in your own respective countries. We're going to be taking those questions and comments. I will start on my far right. Do we have a question or a comment? I see you, gentlemen. Please rise to your feet. Young lady, please also rise to your feet. The one behind you with the pony, with a hairband. The ones that I've noted, just please rise so that when we do come back, we do not miss you. On this side, do we have a question or comment? Question or comment on this section? Please rise to your feet. We have noted you. Question or comment? Hi, people of Saudi. Wait. These are my people of Saudi. They'll be the last ones to speak. There's a young woman from Zimbabwe there. Please rise to your feet. Another question or comment? We're going to do it very quickly, yeah? It's going to be literally 60 seconds. Whoever is holding the mic, when I say grab, please, Ika, don't disappoint. This is you, between you and your raise, is that mic handling. Of course, Bonga, the two colleagues here in the front. We'll then start, your 60 seconds starts now.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Freddy Moncho from the Northern Cape Business Chamber of Youth. My first question is with regards to free basic and higher education. If we are to foster the skills revolution with regards to ensuring that there is free basic education and higher education, because currently now, even basic education in South Africa is not free. You still have state-owned schools that ask for school fees. Secondly, I would like to check also with regards to ensuring that BRICS finds expression in contesting the hegemony of the Bretton Woods Brothers institutions. How are we going to ensure that the political will in these respective countries reflect that? Because if we have to look at the policy position of the ruling party, for example, in this country, it leaves much to be desired. Thirdly, with regards to youth funding also, how are we going to ensure that we simplify that? Thank you very much.
Follow that process. Succinct, straight to the point. No thesis, please.
Good day. My name is Karabo Mkhonyana.
Bito.
Hello, Bito. My question is around whenever we speak about skills of the future, there are two parts that we don't really focus on, and that is a skills mismatch within our higher learning institutions. So the question of whether because there's a lot of experiments within our learning institutions in terms of introducing these new skills, but I think the preparedness is questionable as to whether we are ready for that. But also, in the context of developing countries, and I'll speak in the context of South Africa, I am of the opinion that we are not ready to adopt new industries. So we very much focus on the mining and the agriculture because that's our comfortable industries, and rightfully so. But are we ready now to adopt new industries, going into the green economy, going into the blue economy? And do we have the technical capacity to create industries?
Thank you very much. Well done, Bito. That's Karabo. Straight to the point. There's a question here in the front, Ika. We're coming to you now. Just give us 2 seconds.
Thanks a lot, dear colleagues, for your inspirational speeches. And I suppose that you covered a lot of problems that we should consider in our BRICS format. But I just want to elaborate on the issue about higher education. And our dear colleague from China, he mentioned BRICS Network University. And I just want um, to know your opinion about the problems like academic mobility, the common educational standards for our youth. So we should like understand and discuss: is it possible to have in general these common standards? Is it possible to have common programs in bachelor or master programs, and how we can like to have common points in this sphere? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gentleman here in front of me.
Uh, my name is Zenzede Kupe from Future Life Institute in Japan, or a South African too. My statement is not a question, would be maybe a comment. I'm a little bit worried when we talk about aiming education in the future. The future doesn't exist. The future exists in a stream of probabilities, and there's nothing that we can do today to predict how the future is supposed to be. And this is the danger. Whenever I think about the way our education, we have a lot of different educational programs. Had the privilege to have a master's degree that I received in China, and I met my teacher there. So I had to learn the differences between how other countries use the education system. In South Africa, we have a problem. There's a large disconnection between what people want to study and what the country needs to develop. There seems to be a disconnection between the two. For instance, when I was at the university, my first primary degree was in BSc in Geological Sciences. 2 years down the line when I graduate, and the geology was not employing anymore. So I had to start to think, because it was my individual choice. This has not been an objective, a country's objective to try to motivate and set up economic intensive so that the students would be challenged whenever they move from high school into higher education. So we have that danger. And second, if we talk about the future, and I started by a contradiction statement, which is philosophical a little bit, which says the future does not exist. It only exists in probabilities. The reason why we sit here today and we're frustrated about the future is because we are not a part of the people who are inventing the future. That's the reason why we are frustrated. We are not a part of the people that are inventing the future. So it is a task for BRICS, if BRICS want to be effective. I remember one of the Chinese philosopher, Kongzi, he said, Yocha Wule is Confucius. He said, emphasize the significance of education. So for BRICS, our basic backbone should be based on how we exchange the skill. And exchanging the skill is not enough. Exchanging bachelor's degree, exchanging master's degree is not enough. We need a deliberate government and government exchange on the researches, because that's where you invent the future. You don't invent the future by giving this basic information. This basic information is sufficient. But if you invent the future and invent the frontiers of research, I have a privilege that my large part of my life I have to spend looking at 300 years, 400 years from now. Yes, so these are the quick comments that I thought should be important. To the Minister of Deputy Minister of Higher Education, I wanted to know if you have any deliberate program that exchange the research at the research level between the BRICS countries, not only to exchange the skill from FET college, that's not enough. And I would tell you, if BRICS want to be effective, that's not enough. One of the examples I will put.
Leadership. Thank you. Thank you. We are running out
I'm
of
sorry.
time. You and I will engage. I like your thesis. There's potential in it. Sharon?
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sharon Lindelwa, the founder of the Financial Grind. I wanted to comment and also touch base on the issue of financial transformation. And I believe that in as far as digitalization of the financial sector is concerned, there's a relationship with also the financial literacy aspect. And in South Africa and other African countries, financial literacy is at less than 50% of the population. And my question is to the Deputy Minister of Education to say, in as far as the education sector is concerned, what is the industry, what is the sector doing in as far as including financial literacy as part of the learning program and learning module? Because if we are going to have financially literate citizens, it is something that needs to be part of the curriculum. If it's not, then the digitalization for it to be manifested will be a problem. That is my contribution. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bonga?
Thanks. Thanks. Greetings, everyone. So before I ask my question, I think I'll start with a bit of a pre-context as to some of the criticism for BRICS. Is that, for example, with infrastructure, there hasn't been a lot of funds for, there's not a single bridge or road that's been built by the BRICS Development Bank or any of our BRICS partners. So there's been a lot of criticism around BRICS and how they have supported South Africa, especially the less developed countries in BRICS. So my question is to the DM and to our BRICS partners is that, given the criticism that BRICS hasn't really done much to develop at a real economic level some of the programs, we have a burning crisis of free education in SA. I think I'm sitting next to someone who was involved in Fees Must Fall, looking for a portfolio committee chairperson in the room who was part of Fees Must Fall. So Fees Must Fall and free education is a big conversation in South Africa. How are our BRICS partners going to ensure that they are adequate support towards realizing free quality decolonized education in the form of accessing funding? So I think there's a shortfall of, I see treasuries here, 60 billion rand every year from our fiscus in terms of what we need to realize actual free education where everyone can access higher education. So we've got the BRICS Development Bank, we've got all these rich countries in BRICS. How will we ensure as our partners that there is enough funding support for free education to finance that deficit? And the DM, what is your stance in knocking on the door of BRICS to ensure that there is a realization of free higher education in SA? Thank you.
Thank you. Business Council.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So my question will probably be for most of the panel. The name is Luvuyo Manyi. I think when it comes to the transition of skills to demand-led approach, I want to maybe, I think, nudge from in-seater, maybe the rest of the seaters about the BPO environment, your business process outsourcing, as a platform, one that can, leverage digital skills. We have India, which supports our banking sector at the moment, right? With the BPOs, they're highly skilled, highly trained, and develop a lot of digital solutions for our financial services. Why aren't we leveraging these various sectors that exist to then participate and support the various sectors? Also, how can we utilize the BPO environment to service the BRICS states as people come, and we can then facilitate trade between the countries? On the agriculture, so this is to the agri-sector, I believe part of the reason why there's low uptake is because the focus isn't on high value and high growth commodities. Your berries, your nuts, your apples, your citrus, these have high export value potential in the country. We're still a net importer in the country. I believe these are also high in demand within the BRICS environments, particularly India and Russia, if I'm not mistaken. Why aren't we transitioning and developing skills in that particular space for commercial scale processes? Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I did not miss anybody. Oh, 30 seconds. Is yourself there, the back. Please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Usbatle Kumalo from the South African Medical Association Trade Union. One of my questions, or my question is basically with the COVID-19 epidemic showing us that there have been vast insufficiencies in the way we give our education. And post the pandemic, seeing that the lack of decline in the experience and the academic knowledge that is possessed by our professionals and our graduates post the pandemic, how do the BRICS nations serve to or plan to fill in these insufficiencies? And furthermore, how do we ensure that we never find ourselves in the same situation years in the future?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've arrived at the end of the question and comment session for this particular panel. There are going to be more panels, so in case you do still have inputs and questions, please do jot them down for the other panels that are going to be coming through. We had a variety of questions, one on Bretton Woods institutions, your World Bank, IMF. We had a question on human capital, new economies, entering into the green and blue economies, investments in human capital, cross-pollination. We had a plethora of questions. So we're going to request all of our panelists to input on some of the questions and comments that you would have made. And hopefully in the 5 minutes, max, that is the absolute maximum. The only person here not allowed to stop is the deputy minister. But all of you, if I give you a bombastic side eye, please just know that we're nearing the end. Please also just give us your closing remarks and your parting shots on the transformation of education, as well as us preparing for the future of work. Please don't comment on the thesis of whether the future exists or it does not exist. Respond to the critical salient areas that have been raised by the delegates that are here. We're going to be starting with the Chief Executive Officer of the Agri-SETA, and that is Dr. Innocent. We'll then move to my colleagues, and Dadesi Po, Ms. Tan will jump the deputy. He's going to give us our overall closing remarks. After the deputy minister, nobody else speaks except myself as the chairperson of the session. Of course, if you allow me, deputy minister. So we'll then start with you, Dr. Innocent. Give us your final inputs.
Thank you so much, Luvuyo. Obviously, on the issues that we have just raised, we are doing more than the things that we have just raised in terms of supporting our communities. Amongst other things, we have programs where your British American Tobacco, RCL Foods, they get directly from our people on the ground, and they give them offtake agreements. So including the program where whatever they produce are able to be bought by members of the BRICS here. So amongst other things, Chair, just to conclude my part, we want to appreciate the Deputy Minister and the whole department. There's a program where we send students who have artisans, who are artisans. But when you compare the skill with a person who has been there doing work without the education, we have found that those without the education, they are more skilled, and we introduced artisan recognition of prior learning. It's assisting a lot in the communities. Whether a person has a skill in agriculture and does not have the documents to show off, we are responsible for that, and we are ready. Lastly, to everybody who is here, please let's also teach our kids to become good people. There are also shortages of skill in that department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have a severe shortage of good people generally in society, so let's encourage all of us to at least dip into that area. And Mr. Mao, your responses to some of the questions, as well as your parting shots, you do have
Yes.
5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Program Director. I'm from the Peking University, one of the leading leading higher education institutions in China, and also I have 5 years of working experience as assistant professor and at that university. So I'm going to focus on the questions concerning the higher education. First, I want to respond to the question raised by the Russian delegation about joint bachelor programs. Yes, we do have such programs, and I think one of the most important things is that mutual recognition of credits, and also a comparable structure of curriculum, especially in undergraduate programs. At our university, at our Peking University, we have established, for example, the Sino-Russia Mathematics Center, And also we have established the Institute for South-South Cooperation and Development. And we have, I'm from the School of Foreign Languages. We provide also possible scholarships for foreign students to come to our university and to pursue a joint bachelor degree. So the opportunity is there, and we really warmly welcome you to come to our campus. That's the first point. And the second point, I want to reply to the question about the funding and the financial investment. As you know, China has built the world's largest educational system, but it is only possible to do so by prioritizing the youth development and by receiving a strong financial and political support from the central government. Let me give you some data. Last year alone, in 2022, China spent more than 4 trillion RMBs, amounting up to 15% of the fiscal expenditure to the education, which means that 4% of the GDP in total for the 10th consecutive year. So you see the support is very strong and very continuous, and that is the foundation of a successful educational system. And thirdly, I want to come to the point that our colleague from the medical school have raised about the insufficiency of knowledge due to the pandemic. I believe, yes, we're observing the same situation in China, especially among the students that they are really affected by the pandemic. But you know, in China, they're saying in challenges there's also an opportunities. So if we look at the educational transformation during the pandemics, we have to realize that there are new forms of learning, such as remote learning, hybrid learning, online courses, which really reduces the costs and really an open access to share the high quality education resources with other countries. And such forms of new education methods can provide a great opportunity to, you know, for the lifelong learning, and also it could also address the problem which I believe one of the delegates have mentioned about the skill mismatch, because you know the skill mismatch is also a common challenge to all of our countries, but there's also a reskilling and upskilling, and it is possible if we strengthen our cooperation in hybrid learning methods. If we can open up our online courses to like other BRICS countries, you know, if we have in China we have this MOOC system, maybe we can offer this resources, educational resources to like South African countries, to South African students, that they can you know, benefit from that new form of education. Last, the departing remark. Peking University is where I'm from. We are one of the best universities in China, and we are also very privileged to have President Zuma visited our university in 2012, and he was awarded with an honorary professorship from our university. So I want to once again welcome you, dear delegates and dear friends, to come to Beijing to visit our university. Maybe we have shared dialogue in terms concerning education and higher education and TVET education. So that's my parting remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma, all the way from China. Mr. Sipo from the Wholesale and Retail sector.
Thank you, Program Director. I think the wholesale and retail sector in this country is quite massive. But of interest is that the 3.1 million workforce that is in the sector, just less than 1 million, they are formalized. The rest are informal people in the sector. So in terms of the programs that we do, as a SETA, we do support for lifelong learning, the employed people in the sector, and we've got quite a few programs that we do with BRICS member countries. One of the programs that we do is international leadership development, in which we try to drive the transformation in the sector by placing executives within the wholesale and retail sector into the program. We've got countries that participate within the BRICS countries, China, India, and Russia. And that's a program that we do year in, year out, in which the SETA allocates over 100 million or so to do. Then we also currently have a strategic partnership DM with Chinese Culture Exchange Center, where over 100 students from the TVET colleges for future skills. We are taking them to China for a 12-month program on e-commerce, because that's where the retail in terms of the future skills is going. We also currently doing a program with Tech University of Kenya, in which we are recruiting about 120 informal traders. That is what you will traditionally call your street traders and street vendors. So we're doing that particular program in which we are funding and we're facilitating the collaboration between the VET University and ZTech University from Kenya into exposing the informal traders as part of the support that we do. In terms of the unemployed young people, we spend almost 400 million each year as wholesale Tilsita in bursaries alone. Each year. That's how much we put because we're trying to professionalize the sector, we're trying to invest and ensure that the young people have got opportunities as much as they will want, be it being at the TVET colleges, at the University of Technology and the HETs themselves, or if those that you want to go into informal trading space, those that want to get into SMMEs, we've got one of those programs that I've spoken about earlier on, in which we collaborate with the sector. We also have this very nice strategic partnership with your Consumer Good Council of South Africa, in which we're also looking at expanding the issue of supply development program to grow more than what we are doing. And we are opening up into other strategic partnership with most of other BRICS member countries that we've already started with your RMDP and your LDP, as I've indicated. In all, I think in a year, this current financial as we speak, we are almost putting over 940 million investment to benefit just unemployed young people in number of programs that we're doing, from your bursaries into your SMME support and informal traders. So we are there as a wholesale retail sector to play a critical role to other member companies within the BRICS community and establish those particular strategic partnership that some they might not be in financial value, but in exchange for knowledge and exchange for other programs that can be beneficiary for the sector that we are responsible for.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sipo. We'll then hand over to Ms. Tandi of Azania Data.
Thank you, Karabo. My occupation forces me to look at this topic from a tech perspective, which might be an exhaustive view. So we have to first look at what are the pillars of institutional learning. Institutional learning is to prepare for work, to be able to prepare the communities for the economy. And then you have to then look at what does the future work or what does the current work need, and if we are prepared for it is a bigger question. But before you do that, you also have to figure out what is the economy going to look like, define the terms of reference for that, and then thereafter not try fix what you call fit a square into a circle, which is effectively what we wake up and try and do. We prepare for that. We say, okay, cool, this is what the economy needs, and that speaks to the new industries we're referring to. Instead of looking at tech as if it's going to take away, it's merely giving us an opportunity to actually go into new industry, to focus less on the repetitive tasks that machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to take, but more on what does green economy mean to us? How do we contribute to it? What are the skills required for it? What is blue economy and what does it mean? And instead of continuously breeding for past economies, we breed for the economy that is right now and hopefully what the economy will look like in the next 10 years. So that speaks to then access. Tech can provide access. One of the benefits of tech is that you don't actually have to travel, and as we've seen post the COVID and COVID-19 pandemic, is that we can learn from wherever we are. So that means that we can learn from any institution anywhere across the world. So access and exposure, that is a benefit of technology. And how do we harness that? That means that it's the role of government and civil society to ensure that we invest in tech infrastructure that will allow anyone to be able to learn and gain, take the knowledge and implement from anywhere across the world. So whether China, Russia, or India opens up their colleges as they have, e-learning platforms everywhere. Anyone right now can get, yes, you're mentioning Moodle, I think. I work with Moodle quite often. Most of us can get a course from actual, even Oxford, sitting wherever you are, short courses that bridge the skills gap, that we can take. But without access, without exposure, without the relevant infrastructure, I mean, data-free learning, for an example, or actually providing the actual data and connectivity that our economies need, we are merely going to be talking and saying it's open, but nobody is coming, but there is no access to it. So I think, in closing, we need to invest in infrastructure, tech infrastructure that will allow people to have access to learning. And that actually even makes it cheaper, but also invest in the facilitators and educators that provide the actual teaching, to provide data-driven learning, but also individualized learning, because they no longer have to do repetitive tasks or say the same thing over and over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rodrigo from Brazil.
So I think the discussion here, I mean, it's fundamental what we've been discussing right now, but I would like to drop a few statistics to see how education and the disparities of education in the BRICS country is something that we should be worrying, and it should be one of the top priorities when we talk about issues that should be dealt. So just pulling up like some statistics here. In India, for example, according to annual status and education report, which says that only 58% of from the age of 14, 18 are attending school. On the other hand, Brazil, for example, the last report from United Nations 2021 says that 23% of Brazilian teenagers are not attending any form of school, lower or middle school, for example. China, for example, despite the major efforts, still have an issue in China, which I would say that definitely is something that concerns all the BRICS countries, which is how education is brought to the rural and agricultural areas, right? When we talk about inclusiveness, we're talking about indigenous people, we're talking about women being able to go to school, we're talking about people with disabilities being able to access quality education. So we should be definitely looking in terms of like the labor market, how that incorporates. Our colleague here mentioned that very in a very strong and powerful way, right? It's like people when they come out of the university, they don't have the skills set from the perspective of the companies, right? There is a major gap. But we should be looking at access to education, quality education, democratization of education, mainly for the areas where the public policies are not the strongest, right? Which, in case of Brazil, we can think about like difficult regions for access, or agriculture regions where you don't have the same standards which the education is offered. So yes, we should be thinking about green economy, green jobs, blue economy, blue jobs. We should be thinking about mentoring and exchange programs. But I do believe that we are very privileged to be here, right? When we talk about all of this, is because we had access and we had the chance to go to university. And what actually are lacking that, right? These are the people that we should be looking and we should be tackling the subject.
Thank you very much. We'll then hand over to Anastasia from Russia.
Thank you. As my conclusive words, I would like to focus on the issue of how to give an additional impetus to the effectiveness of BRICS financial structures. I think that the first thing we should do is to find the common ground, because even being here and listening to my fellow colleagues, honorary guests, I come to the conclusion that I don't know that much about what is happening in your country, what is happening in BRICS countries, which is why we need to develop the community of experts of BRICS countries to bridge the gap in misunderstanding and to create really joint projects with mutual benefits for all parties and to propose these initiatives. I do believe that if the financial structures will take into account that this or that initiative is mutually beneficial, it will be implemented quicker. So my answer is not just to think, but to try to come to common understanding of what is happening in our countries, what are our interests, and to start taking actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gugu from the insurance sector. Okay.
So I think at the heart of the current skills and future skills is research. And that's where I think through critical investments, we must ensure that we focus on, because the future we talk about, I don't want to go to the comment about the future. The future we talk about can only be carved through research and understanding what the current needs are and also what the future needs be. So in terms of just responding to the question that was asked earlier about financial literacy, so the FSCA, which is the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, undertook a baseline survey in 2022 on financial literacy, and the statistics that the lady made reference to are almost aligned to the outcome of that baseline survey. What we are doing as a financial, as the insurance sector in terms of digital literacy is that because the insurance industry is so financial focused, the majority or the program structure of the occupational qualifications that we offer are already including financial literacy. On specific programs that where financial literacy is not included, what we do, we also offer a standalone financial literacy program, but which is linked to the insurance industry. On the BPO, I'm not sure, Chairperson, whether I should answer the question on behalf of someone who asked the question and disappeared in the room. But the person is no longer here, so, but maybe for the benefit of everyone, let me also take the opportunity to try and respond to that. So on the issue of the BPOs, by its very nature, the insurance industry uses some of the outsourcing services. So from your financial advisors to brokers, those people are not sitting inside Discovery or sitting inside a Momentum. They are outsourced by their very nature. So the model of BPOs is dependent on the business model of a specific entity. But I believe that the insurance industry at large embraces that concept of the BPOs. I also want to just touch on the issue of preparedness for the world of work. What we have done as the insurance sector is that on the learnerships and internships and all the programs that lead to employment, in other words, employability programs, including the TVET work integrated learning programs that we run, we have got a component that is called work readiness, which is bridging a gap between the time when the person is sitting in the classroom and when they get into the world of work. And this talks to soft and technical skills, but also the preparedness and the psyche of the person as they go into the world of work. We know the impact that the COVID pandemic has had on mental health and also the psychosocial well-being of our society. So it's critical that we also include the component of work readiness. And I like what Tani said about the fact that we are all not ready. So until you get to the actual job opportunity, you will never be ready. But we can give you the tools that enable you to get ready and be in the best version that you can be in the work environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gugu. We'll then hand over to the Deputy Minister to just wrap it all up for us and give us his final remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think just some brief comments. The first being that over the last 5 years, our expenditure in education has become the fastest budget item, the highest budget item, the fastest growing budget item over the last 5 years. And partly because of the now this year, 49 billion that we're spending on student funding. And the intention being to have as many students as possible based on their household income having access to higher education. And I think that's a major funding item. And I'm saying this in response to, I think there's one of the participants who spoke about free education. We are SDGs. 90% of South African households do qualify for access to to higher education. That's a major progress as it relates to fee-free higher education. Secondly, I think whatever our view of the future is, the reality is that we have identified certain skills which we believe are agent and are important, and that those skills we need to start training for, or we need to start producing those skills. And that is why many of our universities, for instance, the Tshwane University of Technology has established the Center for the Future of Work, for instance, and it's not just the only one. A whole lot of our universities are focusing on that in order to ensure that we churn out skilled young people along these skills. And that's not only universities. Most of the colleges are also moving towards the direction, training drone pilots, training 3D, skills 3D printing, technicians, and so on and so forth. So we're positioning our institutions, in order to respond to that. And then the question of the world of work, that our education system has to prepare young people for the world of work, but beyond that, also that we have to focus on research. I think as that point mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration that is taking place amongst BRICS member countries. I think Mao spoke quite extensively on the collaboration between South Africa and China. In fact, through our peoples-to-people exchange mechanism, one of the focus areas, is collaboration between South African universities and Chinese universities, specific at different levels. And that's why some of our students who graduated masters in China can speak about the non-existence of the future and the future of probabilities. I fully appreciate, I think, the sentiment, of coming out of here, which is the only way in which BRICS member countries make impact is by strengthening collaboration, strengthening this multilateral platform of engagement, and getting young people, more importantly, to focus on broadly issues of youth development and specifically issues around education and skills. Rodriguez mentioned a couple of statistics which are quite interesting. You fell short of mentioning the one on South Africa where young people are not in education or in employment, which is equally scary. And that's something that's quite common, amongst the BRICS countries. And I think you here in this room, holds some of the solutions and proposals on how we can, agently deal with all of those. But otherwise, thank you very much for having invited me to participate here.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panel. We really do hope that this panel laid a solid foundation for us to have a centric youth perspective that will chart a blueprint on how we can be able to edge the participation of young people in multilateral platforms. I think there is a need for us to ensure that the young people that are here do not leave this information in this room. That when you go back to your communities and you engage with different people, you impart this information and knowledge that you would have acquired in this particular session. So we just want to take this opportunity to appreciate each and every one of you for participating and engaging our panel. But most importantly, thank you to our panel for your inputs and for challenging us to be outward looking, for challenging us to understand that we too have a role to play in agitating for the change that we want to see in our respective countries. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a wonderful panel round of applause as they're going to be taking their seats.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, just please take note that at this point we're going to be taking a very short tea break just to allow for our international guests to have a photo opportunity